Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating astrological framework that gives us a really profound lens into human behavior. Specifically, we're looking at how we act, or honestly, how we don't act, during those prolonged, absolutely exhausting disputes. We're diving into a concept from astrological insights called Ketu in the sixth house, which is perfectly subtitled The Path of Detached Conflict. If you've ever felt completely stuck in a disagreement that just refuses to resolve no matter what you do, the source material we're breaking down today offers a radically different way to look at the battlefield.
I mean, why do some conflicts literally just never seem to end? It's a deeply relatable human frustration, isn't it? We've all seen or maybe even been trapped in these dragging, unclear legal battles or messy personal disputes. You know the kind. The finish line just keeps moving, the energy completely drains out of everyone involved, and the original reason you even started fighting gets completely lost in the weeds. Well, today's explainer takes this real-world frustration and maps it directly onto this unique astrological placement to figure out exactly why the standstill happens.
Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, the path of detached conflict. According to the source text, Ketu in the sixth house represents exactly that, the path of detached conflict. This esoteric concept is essentially the underlying driver of clashes, where traditional, straightforward resolutions just don't apply. Normally, when we think of a fight, we picture two opposing sides aggressively pushing for a win, right? Raised voices, clear demands, a definitive clash of wills. But this placement entirely flips the script. It tells us that the standard rules of engagement, like pushing harder, fighting louder, or doubling down on your demands, simply are not going to work to bring an end to the dispute. And here's how that actually plays out. The first major prediction from the text is that legal or conflict outcomes may feel unclear or unresolved for really long periods. Let's imagine a hypothetical legal case for a second, maybe a dispute over a business contract. In a normal scenario, you go to mediation, a judge makes a call, and everybody moves on. But under this framework, that case drags on indefinitely. Extensions are filed, endless technicalities pop up out of nowhere, and there is zero finish line in sight. Or think about a messy family inheritance. The house sits empty. Siblings stop talking. Attorneys send a letter every 6 months, but absolutely nothing actually happens. Years go by, and you're just left sitting in this murky, unresolved gray area, waiting for a shoe to drop that never actually falls. So, why does this happen? That brings us to Section 2, a mindset of disinterest. The text notes that detachment from results can actually reduce active involvement in disputes. And what's truly fascinating here is that instead of digging their heels in and fighting harder, the individual develops this profound disinterest in the actual outcome. They look at the battlefield, they weigh the emotional cost, and they simply stop caring who takes home the trophy. This totally shifts the entire dynamic. Because let's face it, it takes two to wage a war. When one side unplugs and stops actively playing the game, the entire machinery of the dispute just slows down and grinds to a halt. The momentum completely collapses. And this brilliantly illustrates how a lack of attachment actively stalls progress. The source text highlights a tendency to avoid engaging deeply in conflicts and notes that a lack of emotional attachment delays decisive action. Going back to our hypothetical legal case, because you lack that fiery, desperate need to win, you might take 3 weeks just to reply to a basic email from your lawyer. You're casually avoiding the deep, taxing engagement required to push the matter through the courts, and that inaction actively paralyzes the process. You aren't losing the fight, but you aren't surrendering either. You're just casually refusing to participate in the mechanics of it all. Which leads right into Section 3, navigating confusing resolution paths. Because of that initial mindset of disinterest we just talked about, specific roadblocks inevitably start popping up. The text predicts that important details in cases may be overlooked. I mean, if you aren't aggressively tracking the paperwork, you're going to miss things. Plus, hidden factors might remain entirely unexplained. When nobody is fiercely digging for the truth or demanding discovery, the real facts just stay buried. Ultimately, this means resolution paths feel confusing or indirect. It's literally like you're wandering through a maze where half the walls are missing, nobody has a map, and honestly, no one is even particularly motivated to find the exit. But these things do eventually end, which brings us to Section 4, unexpected and unconventional endings. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this framework completely redefines victory. The text explicitly states that legal matters may end in unexpected or unconventional ways. Victory here does not look like a judge banging a gavel and handing you a giant settlement while the other side weeps. It's totally unorthodox. Maybe the rival company you were suing simply gets bought out by a larger conglomerate and the whole lawsuit just dissolves into thin air. Or maybe you randomly bump into that estranged family member at a coffee shop, have a surprisingly normal conversation, and mutually agree to drop the whole thing over a latte. It is rarely, if ever, that dramatic courtroom win you see on TV.
I want to pause here for a second and just sit with the psychological weight of this quote. Right from the text, closure in disputes may feel incomplete or mentally unsatisfying. Man, that is tough to swallow. We're so deeply conditioned by movies and books to want a neat, tidy ending with a perfect bow on top, where the good guy gets everything and the bad guy learns a lesson. But this placement warns us that we might be denied that satisfying conclusion. The dispute might technically be over on paper, but mentally, it leaves a strange, lingering aftertaste. It's this deep, quiet frustration that you really just have to learn to navigate.
And navigating that frustration is what Section 5 is all about: resolution through true acceptance. This brings us to the absolute core takeaway for anyone feeling trapped in an unending, frustrating conflict. The text reveals resolution often comes through acceptance rather than control. Think of it like driving a car that starts sliding on a patch of ice. The harder you grip that steering wheel and violently try to control the direction, the more out of control the car actually spins, right? The only way out of the maze is to stop trying to force the walls to move and simply accept the terrain for exactly what it is. Just notice the stark contrast in these two approaches. On the left, we have control. This is the ineffective, deeply frustrating attempt to force a specific outcome. It's trying to manage every single detail to demand that satisfying conventional victory. And it's exactly what leads to those dragging timelines and that feeling of just banging your head against a brick wall. But on the flip side, we have acceptance. This is the radical, peaceful pivot. It means acknowledging the unconventional ending, letting go of the desperate emotional attachment to being right, and fully embracing the murky, incomplete closure. According to the text, true resolution and peace of mind only live on the side of acceptance. Which brings us to our final thought for today. I really want you to think about the friction in your own life right now, in your current disputes, whether they're legal, professional, or just deeply personal. Are you seeking control, or are you ready for acceptance? It is an incredibly challenging framework to apply when you're in the heat of a battle, for sure. But letting go of the outcome might just be the most powerful, liberating move you can possibly make. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this gives you a fresh, detached perspective on the conflicts in your world.